Okay, so we're picking up where we left off last time. This is part 4 of the Perspective 101 3-point perspective series. And we're going to be taking the original sketch, now that all of our setup is there, now that we have our measure points and our reference lines in there, we're going to use our sketch that we made in I think it was part 2. I'm going to be using that sketch that we made in part 2 in this particular setup because I like this one the best. And we're going to be creating measure bars and a true height line so that we can foreshorten the space, but we're going to be creating the units based on what we have in the scene already. And hopefully this will make sense once I start messing with it. So the first thing, let me just make sure it's recording, sorry. Yeah, it is, all right. The first thing to note is that we've been using this topographic map, so this plan and this elevation that I created before I started the video series. This took me maybe an hour to set up, but it's all based on logic. Based on my experience and based on manufacturing techniques and based on average heights of things, so that everything can be correctly scaled, correctly proportioned, and show a degree of sensitivity to realism, right? So we're trying to create a space that's representational. This space is 14 units wide by 10 units deep by 10 units tall. So notice over here this is a square, and over here it's a rectangle. So 10 units deep, 10 units high, 14 units width. With that said, we know that we need 14 units wide. So y is going to be our width. Okay, let's bring up our sketch, if I can, if it's still here. Okay. So I'm going to reduce this, and I'm going to bring back my cone of vision. There we go. So I know that I want my cone to reside, or I want my canvas to reside somewhere in here, and I like this viewpoint. So I'm going to create a canvas real quick. And hopefully it's something that will show the space off well. So we'll just make this one, I want to make this black, because that's usually a good idea. And let's use chalk. Okay. I'm not sure I like that just yet. But now that we've got a canvas here, so I might go a little bit outside of the cone of vision. So this part right here would start to get to be a little distorted and maybe somewhat wide angle. But I'm thinking of my composition and how I can relate my composition to the viewer, and I feel like this is going to be the best. And I'm thinking ahead of like having dishes in here a specific way, and then having those curtains, which I don't know where, I think they're in a later layer, but they're, you know, the curtains that are here, and how the eye will move in and through the piece. And I also notice that I'm going outside here because I don't have any other lines that are going in two different directions. I only have one shape that's going up. So as long as there's not two shapes meeting, you can go outside of the cone of vision and no one will know it's distorted But if you do this, you have to be very careful. I'm going to bring it out a little bit more as well so that I have an equal amount of space. I would much rather have a little bit more space on the left than on the right hand side, which is going to help us keep the viewer's eye inside the canvas. All right. So now that we've got the frame, I like this frame. It's good. So this is our frame, or our portal. I call it a portal because it resides on the picture plane and it's an open window. So think of a piece of glass that is all black except where you want to view the world from, and then you make this diagram on the glass, and then you start painting with inside that area. So it's just very particular to me and how I think of things, and what I've noticed confuses students. So it's important that I'm creating something that's or some terms that students might understand a little better. All right, so now I need to create a measure bar. Now a measure bar, when I create the measure bar, I need to find at least one unit inside space that I feel represents what's happening here. Okay. So let me just say that that this plane of existence is cutting off this object. Let's say this plane of existence right here between this green X, so negative green and negative red, or negative X and negative Z. I'm trying to find where the back of this wall meets here. So let's say it meets right there. Let's say that the front corner meets right there. So I'm using these points right here to sort of give me an idea of what's happening in this little swath of space. I hope you guys can see this. So this is a little sheet that is going along in these directions here. So along the X going in the negative, and along the Z going in the negative. And it's along that plane of existence going back in space. All right. So I need to decide what's happening here. Where this is meeting is like slightly above the window. So maybe it's right on this unit right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units up. Okay. So if that's the case, if this is where that's meeting, and I said that that's 5 units, then that must mean that from here down to here is 5 units. Okay. So here's something that I taught you guys before, but I'm not quite sure if, well, let's just, one thing at a time, okay? First things first, we need to make sure that we have a true height measure bar so that we can foreshorten this unit right here onto that true height line and then get 5 units. And then we'll take that 5 units and then we'll subdivide it into equal units, and then we'll use that measure bar everywhere. Okay, so we're really reverse engineering all this stuff, okay? So we know that this is 5 units high because I decided that, right? So I just kind of estimated where that was at and how high that was based on, just using relative reference. So the bottom of the window is here, it's right here, and then, this is just a little bit higher. And so comparatively, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then some. I could say that from here up it's 1, 2, 3, and then some, right? So that's 4 units and then some. So I'm just dividing the open windowed space and then tracing this out until I hit edges and until I hit the bottom, and then guesstimating that, right? So this is going to give me a good place to start from. Okay. So first off, let me get rid of the frame here. I'm going to get rid of the cone of vision as well, and then we need to bring back our two distance lines. So that distance line right there. Okay, so we did cut it off right at the end there. So we need to bring, we just actually only need this distance line. So that's good. Okay. So this is how the true height line works, okay? First off, as you guys know, because this has been drilled into you guys for a long time, that the measure point foreshortens space, it foreshortens units onto its associated reference line, right? So if I had a measure bar, I would be able to find its units by going through the measure bar and projecting it onto the reference line. Okay, so this reference line is actually meeting at 0 at the eye. So I already know that even though I don't have a measure bar up here, I know that this is the eye level. So if I know that that's the eye level right there because it's on the horizon line, and this is my reference line and it's on eye level, that anything that I place that's a measure bar, anything that I place that's on this line will automatically be, any measure bar that stops at this line or goes past this line will automatically be ground zero, right? So this, along here, it foreshortens measuring units onto reference lines, right? So this is my reference line, and this is my foreshortening line, right? So this is my measure line. Now, when we're looking at placing a height line, we have to go along one of the other distance line. This is where it gets confusing, okay? So we're actually going to use another distance line as the height, and it must be opposite of the Z measuring point, okay? So if I would have created my Z distance line here and we would have swapped my measure point over here, then that means that we would have to use the blue. We would have had to use the blue distance line, okay? But we are not. We're using the green, so we're going to be creating a measure bar along this green distance line, and it's going to be infinite. It's going to go all the way up, infinite. We're going to make it stop actually right here, but it indefinitely continues, right? So our measure bar will be right there. So this is just a rule, okay? The true height line, which is the elevation line, must be on the opposite distance line from the measure point of Z. Okay, so this is just what you got to do, and it passes through the center of vision. So let's actually get this going now. So we're gonna make a measure bar, and so this is gonna be our true height line measure bar. All right, so I'm just going to parallel this line, the green line that you see, the green distance line. So that's the X distance line, just going to parallel that. And then I'm going to cross that red measure line. And you can see that that line is indeed parallel. and then I'm going to lower that measure bar down so that it meets the line that goes between the Z measure point and eye level, right? So again, we already know that this foreshortens units from a measure bar onto a measure line. But here's the rub. We already know that where the reference line meets the eye level, it's eye level. So this is a good way for us to just already check ourselves. We can put this measure line to C and then stop our measure bar right where C meets the measure line because that's eye level. And then we can start building our units from there along this line. So the next thing we have to do is we have to go from Z measure point through that 5 unit mark that we made. Remember, this is 5 units down. So we need to go through that and on to our measure bar. Okay. So this is our first unit. We have now sorry, I want to make sure all my measure lines are on the measure line layer. I don't want to get this stuff confused. So not only did we have eye level, we already knew what eye level was because the horizon line is at eye level. We also know what 5 units down is now. So now we've got 5 units down, and this is where we have to divide this line. We have to divide this line using a technique that I have not really delved into yet, but this is how this technique works, okay? So I'm just going to demo it real quick on the side and show you. This is usually used if we want to divide this space into equal divisions, but we don't actually know how long it is, right? So we don't know if it's 12 inches or if it's 1 inch or if it's 1.25770. We don't know. We just know that we want 5 equal divisions in this. So what we'll do, I'm going to hit Control R so that we can bring up our ruler, is we're actually going to create a 5 unit. So 1. Actually, I didn't really need to do that. I didn't need to bring up the ruler. All I needed to do was say, all right, well, we need 5 units since we're in the computer. If we were in real life, we would have to actually take a ruler and do this. But now we have 5 units that are, I'm pretty sure all of you can see that this is equidistant 5 units, right? There are 5 equal units on here, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Okay, we need this. And this is how we're going to transfer these units over here proportionately. So these will be equal distant 5 unit divisions. So this is transferring linear spaced units, equidistant units, to another length with also equidistant units. Equidistant is just this unit is the same distance as that unit. Foreshortened units is what we're about to do. So our measure bars always take equidistant units. That means that all of the units are equal. Whereas foreshortened units, all of the units are not equal. They actually shrink as they go back in space and expand as they go forward. So we're going to take this, we're going to mount it at the one end. Okay, so it has to meet at one end, and it must be rotated. It cannot be at 90 degrees. So it doesn't matter what rotation it is. It could actually be more if we want. It could be like that. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is that one end is connected. So the number 1 unit is connected down here. And then what we'll do is connect the opposite unit here. So we'll just do this in another color. So this is red, that's orange. So this is, the orange is going to receive the red's unit spacing. So basically I'm going to connect now the other two ends. Nope, it didn't work. So we're going to connect these two. And then all I have to do is copy that to the next unit. And then the next. And then the next. If I was using a ruler, I would just make sure that each of these lines are parallel to the original line when I do that. And then now we have 5 units on this new, on the longer line. And they're equal distant units. I don't know what the units are spaced. I don't know if they're 1 inch or not, but these units are equidistant. All of these units are equidistant. And so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to divide this space up into 5 equal units. So let's actually take this guy right here. Actually, no, you know what? Let's take this one. And then I'll copy that to a new layer. Since it's 5 units, we can now do what we just did. All right. So I'm going to, it doesn't matter which end, I'm going to start at this end right here. So we're going to start down here. Remember, this right here is 5 units high. So from the center of vision down to here is 5 units. And so that means from the center of vision along the distance line here, the true height line, to where it foreshortened or forelengthened, that 5th unit, that is going to be what needs to be divided into 5 units, 5 equal units. So now I will take this 5th unit, I will go through the center of vision. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to clean this up too much because it's going to be clean once we're done. And then all we're going to do is cross, we're going to parallel that and cross the next unit. Parallel that, cross the next unit. Parallel that, cross the next unit here. Parallel that, cross the next unit. All right, so now we have our measure bar with accurate units that are based on the estimate of our sketch. So our estimate was based on logic. It was based on true things that were happening in the image. Let's get rid of that. So now we have, where's our measure bar at? Let me take that. There we go. All right, so these will now be placed on the true height line. So I'm going to merge those down. So now we have, oops. Yeah, why did that do that? Okay. So there we go. Now we have our true units. From here on out, these are our true units, which means that we can spread these around on the picture plane all we want. So this true height line is actually flat on the picture plane right now, and that is an important consideration, which is why we can move it around to other measuring bars on the picture plane. So we're going to take that and then multiply that downward. And then we're also going to multiply it upward. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units that can be foreshortened along this line right here. So we can now extend our reference line to accept these units if we so choose. We don't need to, though, because everything that's inside the view right now can be calculated from these few units here. And we don't need anything more than 5 units down here because there's no need for them. If you notice that this is the ground anyway, so all we need to do is foreshorten 5 units on the ground and then maybe lengthen 5 units up onto that reference line. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that true height line and we are going to copy it and rotate it so that it fits perfectly horizontal at the center of vision. Because remember, the center of vision is the only place, it's the only place in the whole entire image, the only place that's shared between all of the different views. So now we're going to take that. I'm going to put the center right there so we can rotate it until it's flush with the center line there. All right. So now I have to decide like where this unit is, right? So I need to know how far to the left this first unit is, because that's where I need to place my measure bar unit. Wherever that unit is, it's going to be on the blue here, right? So it's going to be received on the blue, but that's where that unit is going to stick. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to turn that off. We are going to, yes, we're going to jump back over to our Z. This is our Z measure points. So Z, M, measure lines. And then I'm going to put that in between Z so that we know. Now we're going to need an X. So this is going to be X measure line. Just keeping things clean so it's easy to deal with. And then this one's going to be our Y measure lines. Okay, so let's go to our Y, okay, because we need to foreshorten the Y units. So check this out. We're going to do some more guesstimation, right? So we're going to be guessing some things. So I'm going to go from Y. I'm going to go along the front edge there. And then I'm going to go from X forward. And then I'm going to go X forward through here until it matches somewhere on here, right? So that line was a guesstimation. This one is accurate. So I would say that the tabletop is actually, it's right there. And then we're going to go from Y over here. We're going to cross that height over to the left. We're just finding things in space, that's all. And then here we are. There's this right here. And that is going to be whatever to the left it's going to be. And then we just, we take that unit up to our measure bar. Or sorry, our reference line. Okay. All right. So basically, if I erase all the rest of this, we found a point that's whatever units to the left, whatever units down, right? And then we found how far over to the left that this object is going to be. Now we can bring out our trusty measure bar. There we go. And then we can start to foreshorten this to the Y measure point, because remember, the Y reference line can only be foreshortened using the Y measure point. So we are going to go from our Y measure point to that foreshortened unit. And then now we know where our first unit is going to be. Do you see how I did that right there? See that unit? It's on that line foreshortened already. Okay. So now we can start foreshortening and forelengthening these units onto this line. We can now also do the same with these units onto this line here using this measure bar as well, because we now have the front corner of all of this room, all of this space, and then now we can start building our space out. Where did I put that line? There we go. All right. And we'll get rid of that as well because we already know now. Actually, I'll turn that back on, but I'll reduce its opacity so that it'll still be there when we need it. All right. So let's go ahead and start foreshortening these units now that we know that they're all in place. So I'm going from the measure bar over the reference line of its associated vanishing point and to the measure bar. Oops. So basically I'm trying to hit that unit right there. I'm going over this unit here. So I'm going over that space to the right. Come on. There we go. So I'm going to do this anyway. I'm going to go past each of these units because we need to forelengthen the space quite a bit. And this reference line is not there yet. But we're going to do this anyway. And then that way we won't have to do it later. I'm making them longer because this is the line we need to extend. We need to extend our Y reference line out like that. I'm not going to do that just yet though. It's going to be almost impossible out here. Yeah, we can't go any further. So it doesn't matter. So we'll continue to do this. All right. So this is a little overkill. I don't need to really worry about this side too much because it's foreshortening back in space, whereas the left-hand side is forelengthening onto what would be that right reference line. So that's so the Y reference line. Let's extend it. Okay. All right. So that is as good as it gets. So I'm getting rid of this because I don't want to be confused. At the same time, I want you guys to still know that what's happening here. So on this side, our measure bar is in front of this reference line, so we have to cross our reference line before we hit our measure bar. But on this side, our foreshortened reference line is in front of the measure bar. It's not really in front. This is an optical illusion. It's not really in front. It just so happens this is the way it works. It's below, whereas this is above. So this is above it, going down, and this is below. So we're going from our reference line out to, our measure point through our measure bar and out to our reference line. Measure point through our measure bar out to our reference line. So in the end, those tick marks are all that really matter now. So let's get rid of all this. So those are all foreshortened units from the measure bar onto that reference line. So look at how small that is back there. Each unit gets progressively bigger and bigger and bigger as it moves out. Right? Okay. Good. Glad you guys can see that. So let's go to X here. All right. So we're going to go, so this is X now. We're going to go from our measure point. We're going to go across our reference line to the unit that's furthest out on the measure bar. So remember, the X measure point is crossing the X reference line. And going to the measure bar. Notice where each of these lines are meeting the reference line. As we start moving forward, they will start getting larger and larger. Okay, this is where it gets fun. We're going to be crossing the measure bar now and going to the reference line. Notice how much bigger these units are getting the further out we go. So it looks like this one is going to be super duper long. I don't think that we'll need this, but let's go ahead and let's lengthen this reference line until at least it meets right there. Okay. So now our measure bar, our horizontal measure bar can go away. We'll bring back our true height line, but our horizontal measure bar can go away because we already have now our units foreshortened in space onto our reference line. So now we have our X and our Y with foreshortened units. On our X we have, which is going back into the left, it's going back a lot more foreshortened than the right. So we have our width of our building is going to be here and our depth is going to be there. And then our Z depth is going to be down, or our height is going to be up and down, which we'll get in a minute. But you can see now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units back in space. And if this is 5 units, then I don't think that we're going to be going back 7 units. I think that maybe this is 1.5 units to 2 units. I'll just call it 2 units, and then we'll be done with it. So obviously we're just using the sketch as a sort of reference guide to help us block in our space. So now we got to go to Z. Let's go to Z. So we're going to go back to our Z measure point. And then now, because all of our Z is lined up, every time we pass, every time we pass our reference line and hit our measure bar, it hits on our Z depth correctly. So these units going downward, they're fairly shallow, so they're not as, because our Z is so far away, these units are fairly shallow, so they're not as, they don't change as much. So I'm going through my measure point on my measure bar to my reference line. Now keep in mind, this is 0. This is the eye level all the way across. So if we keep going, we're going above eye level. This is where hopefully this will start to make sense. And then I'll have to relabel this just to make sure that it's good to go. So we'll do one more in our height, just in case. And then we will extend our Z reference line. And there we go. So now I'm going to erase everything that's not on a unit, except for the eye height. Oops. Except for eye level. We're going to leave eye level alone. So give me a second while So our reference line is in the middle. Oops. This is where it starts to get good. This is where everything comes to a close and the rest of our life becomes super easy. All right, so now I'm going to get rid of the true height line there, and I'm also going to turn off my X distance line. There we go. And now we have 3 axes. We got X, Y, and Z, all foreshortened units. And now we can start plotting things. This is good. This is really good, you guys. All right. Can you hear the excitement in my voice? So I'm going to stop the video here and then pick up with the holodeck and blocking everything in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.